Ever wondered how people slept soundly in the Middle Ages? Did they just hope no one would break in and steal their stuff? In a world without security cameras, motion sensors, or even electricity, medieval communities developed ingenious ways to protect their homes and valuables. These forgotten security techniques weren't just effective, they shaped entire communities and sometimes even determined who lived and who died. Number 7. Community watches that would make your neighborhood app jealous. Could your neighbors identify an outsider at a glance? Medieval ones could. Medieval communities relied heavily on each other for protection in ways modern suburbs could never imagine. The concept of watching your neighbor's back wasn't just a nice gesture, it was a formal obligation. Towns established complex watch systems where citizens took turns patrolling streets, particularly after dark when most crimes occurred. In many European towns, every able-bodied man between certain ages, usually 16 to 60, was required by law to take turns standing watch. These weren't optional community service hours, they were mandatory duties enforced with fines or even public shaming for those who skipped their shifts. What made these watches especially effective was the intimacy of medieval communities. In a typical town of just a few thousand people, everyone recognized their neighbors. Strangers stood out immediately, making it difficult for outsiders to move about unnoticed. The unknown face was inherently suspicious, giving communities a natural defense against traveling thieves. Watch stations positioned at town gates and strategic corners meant that movement through public spaces was observed virtually around the clock. Watchmen carried horns, bells, or wooden clappers to sound alarms that could mobilize an entire community within minutes. While this system lacked technological sophistication, it compensated through sheer human vigilance and social obligation. Number 6. Doors strong enough to withstand a small army. Think your deadbolt is secure. Medieval doors were basically wooden tanks. The front door of a medieval home wasn't just an entryway, it was the primary defense against unwanted visitors. Unlike today's hollow core doors that can be kicked in with minimal effort, medieval doors were engineering marvels designed specifically to resist forced entry. Craftsmen constructed these barriers from solid oak planks, often several inches thick, arranged in overlapping patterns to eliminate weak points. Cross-bracing distributed force across the entire door, making it extraordinarily difficult to break down even with tools. The most secure doors used multiple layers running in perpendicular directions, creating a virtually impenetrable woody sandwich. Hardware reinforced these wooden shields further. Iron bands, studs, and nail work weren't just decorative, they prevented splitting and added structural integrity exactly where battering would likely occur. The nails themselves were hand-forged monsters with square shafts that, once driven through the wood and bent over on the inside, became nearly impossible to dislodge. The locking mechanisms behind these doors were surprisingly sophisticated. While lacking the precision of modern locks, medieval locksmiths created complex wards and levers that required specifically cut keys. Many households used multiple locks on important doors, each requiring a different key, creating an early form of two-factor authentication. Perhaps most ingeniously, doors were often designed to open inward rather than outward. This simple choice meant that hinges were positioned inside the home rather than exposed, eliminating a significant vulnerability. It also allowed defenders to brace doors with wooden bars that fit into specially carved stone or wooden sockets in the door frame, creating a barricading system that could withstand tremendous force. Number 5. Windows that protected more than they revealed. Were your windows designed to dump boiling water on attackers? Medieval ones were. Windows represented a security paradox for medieval homeowners, necessary for light and ventilation, but dangerous as potential entry points. The solution was a series of innovative designs that balanced these competing needs while maintaining security. In wealthier homes, windows were often narrow slits positioned high on walls, allowing light to enter while remaining too small for human entry. These openings, reminiscent of castle arrow loops, provided visibility without vulnerability. When glass was used, an expensive option available only to the wealthy until later periods, it was typically in small panes set into lead frames, creating a pattern that was both decorative and structurally sound. For larger windows, iron grills became the standard security feature. Blacksmiths forged these into decorative patterns that enhanced rather than detracted from a building's appearance while providing serious protection. The bars were typically set directly into the stone or masonry during construction, making them nearly impossible to remove without dismantling the entire wall. Wooden shutters added another layer of protection, especially at night or during periods of unrest. These weren't flimsy decorative elements but substantial wooden panels, often reinforced with iron, that could be barred from inside. Many shutters included small spy holes that allowed occupants to identify visitors before opening their doors. Perhaps most ingeniously, some urban homes featured windows specifically designed for defense. These projecting windows, similar to miniature versions of castle bartizans, allowed defenders to observe approaches from multiple angles and, if necessary, drop objects on attackers below, an architectural feature that served as both deterrent and active defense mechanism. Number 4. Storage solutions that would baffle modern burglars. Could you find a medieval family's life savings? Thieves couldn't either. Modern homes typically contain obvious places for valuable safes, jewelry boxes, desk drawers. Medieval households took a radically different approach, developing hiding spots that were often integrated into the very structure of their homes. Builders created hollow spaces within thick walls where valuables could be concealed behind removable stones or wooden panels. These hiding places were often disguised as architectural features or positioned in locations that would never attract attention. Some homes featured false bottoms and hearths where coins could be hidden beneath ashes, exploiting thieves' reluctance to search thoroughly through fire debris. Furniture became another venue for ingenious hiding places. Craftsmen created secret compartments in tables, chairs, and beds that could only be accessed through complex sequences of moving parts. These weren't simple hidden drawers but elaborate mechanisms requiring specific knowledge to operate, medieval precursors to modern puzzle boxes. Religious items provided particularly clever disguises for valuables. Hollowed-out prayer books, statues with removable bases, and false reliquaries allowed pious homeowners to hide coins and jewelry within objects that would seem sacrilegious to disturb. This psychological deterrent proved remarkably effective in a deeply religious society. For larger items or emergency supplies, many homes incorporated concealed rooms accessible only through disguised entrances. These spaces, hidden behind sliding panels or false walls, could store food reserves, weapons, or even provide temporary shelter during attacks or civil unrest. The presence of these rooms wasn't shared with outsiders, with knowledge of their existence and operation passing only through family lines. Number 3. Animals that doubled as security systems. Think your doorbell camera is smart. Medieval geese never needed charging. Long before electronic alarms, medieval households employed nature's own security systems, vigilant animals that served as living, breathing alert mechanisms. These creatures weren't just pets, they were essential components of home security. Geese emerged as the medieval equivalent of motion sensors. Known for their territorial aggression and exceptional hearing, these birds would raise an unholy racket at the slightest disturbance. Many households kept geese specifically for security purposes, particularly in rural areas where their honking could be heard across considerable distances. Unlike dogs, geese couldn't be easily silenced or befriended by intruders, making them remarkably reliable sentinels. Dogs served as both deterrents and active defenders. Medieval breeds were typically larger and more aggressive than modern domestic dogs, selected specifically for protective qualities rather than companionship. These animals weren't just trained to bark at strangers, but often to physically engage with intruders. Households frequently allowed dogs to roam freely within enclosed yards at night, creating zones that potential thieves would need to navigate before even reaching the house. In agricultural settlements, larger livestock played unexpected security roles. Cattle and horses, with their acute senses and high-strung nature, would react visibly to unfamiliar presences, alerting humans to potential dangers. Their size alone created physical barriers that intruders would need to navigate, adding complexity to any theft attempt. Even common barnyard fowl contributed to property security. Chickens, easily disturbed from their roosts, would create distinctive commotion that seasoned farmers could distinguish from normal night sounds. This natural alarm system cost nothing to maintain while providing continuous monitoring. Number 2. Village layouts designed to spot trouble. Was your neighborhood built to trap criminals? Medieval villages were. Modern suburbs prioritize aesthetics and convenience, but medieval community planners focused primarily on security when designing settlements. The resulting village layouts incorporated sophisticated defensive elements that modern urban planners are only now rediscovering. Many villages featured a single main road with limited access points, creating natural choke points where strangers could be observed entering the community. This design eliminated the possibility of slipping unnoticed into the settlement and simplified monitoring requirements. Sometimes these entry points included simple gates that could be closed at night or during periods of danger. Housing arrangements maximized collective security. Homes typically faced inward toward community spaces rather than outward toward surrounding countryside. This orientation meant that front doors and main windows overlooked areas where neighbors could observe comings and goings. The resulting social surveillance created environments where suspicious activity would immediately attract attention. Property boundaries relied less on privacy fences and more on features that enhanced visibility and community awareness. Low stone walls, hedgerows, and other semi-permeable boundaries allowed neighbors to maintain visual connection while still defining property lines. This transparency meant that unusual activity on one property could be easily observed from adjacent homes. In some regions, particularly those facing regular threats, entire villages adopted circular layouts with concentric rings of buildings surrounding central community spaces. This design, known as a round village, provided exceptional defensive advantages, with each home protecting the back of another and all facing toward a communal center that often contained the village's most valuable assets. Number 1. Social systems that made theft nearly impossible. Did your neighbors know exactly what you owned? Medieval ones did. Perhaps the most effective medieval security system wasn't physical at all, but social. Communities developed intricate accountability structures that made stealing extraordinarily difficult even when physical defenses were overcome. Property ownership was public knowledge in medieval communities. Unlike today, where few people know what valuables their neighbors possess, medieval communities maintained collective awareness of who owned what. Major purchases or acquisitions became community knowledge, making unexplained possession of valuable items immediately suspicious. This transparency created a situation where stolen goods became difficult to enjoy or sell locally. Markets and trade operated under strict oversight. Merchants needed licenses and permissions to sell goods, with regulations requiring them to account for the provenance of their merchandise. These systems made disposing of stolen property challenging, as unfamiliar items appearing suddenly in local markets raised immediate questions about their origins. Legal systems reinforced these social controls with harsh penalties. Theft wasn't just punished as a property crime, but as a violation of community trust. Punishments ranged from public humiliation to severe physical penalties, creating powerful deterrents. More importantly, communities often held families collectively responsible for their members' crimes, adding social pressure to legal consequences. Perhaps most effective was the honor system that governed medieval communities. One's reputation represented their most valuable asset, determining everything from marriage prospects to business opportunities. This created an environment where the social cost of dishonesty far outweighed potential material gains from theft. Religious institutions reinforced these social controls with spiritual authority. Theft wasn't just illegal but sinful, condemning the perpetrator to divine punishment beyond earthly consequences. Priests regularly reminded congregations of these spiritual dangers, adding supernatural monitoring to community surveillance. So next time your phone buzzes with a security alert, consider how medieval communities managed to sleep soundly without a single volt of electricity. Could modern neighborhoods ever return to community-based security? Would you trust your neighbors enough to try?